You wake up tired. You check your phone before your feet touch the floor. You have a commute, a inbox, a to-do list that never actually ends. This is what a normal day feels like. You assume it has always been this way. You assume humans have always been busy. But the real answer is far stranger. For most of human history, a normal day looked almost nothing like yours. No alarm clock, no inbox, no 9 to 5. Just a small group of people waking up when the light woke them, deciding together what to do with the hours ahead. And here is the strange part. They probably worked less than you do. Much less. Think about that for a second. How could that possibly be true? In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Lee traveled to the Kalahari Desert to study the Jew/Hwanzi people, a hunter-gatherer community who had lived largely outside of industrial civilization. He wanted to answer a simple question: how hard do people work when there is no boss, no clock, and no calendar? So he tracked their days, hour by hour, task by task. What he found broke the assumption almost everyone carried at the time. The adults in the group spent around 15 hours a week finding food. 15. Not 50. Not 60. 15. The rest of their time went to rest, to conversation, to storytelling, to naps in the shade, to making tools slowly and carefully instead of rushing. Lee's data suggested something almost embarrassing for modern life. The so-called primitive humans were not scrambling to survive. They were, in a very real sense, off the clock most of the week. An anthropologist named Marshall Solins later took this idea and gave it a name that stuck. He called early hunter-gatherer societies the original affluent society. Not affluent because they had more stuff. They had almost no stuff. Affluent because they had enough, and they knew it, and they stopped there. Solins argued that scarcity is not just about how much you have. It is about the gap between what you want and what you have. Close that gap, and you are wealthy, even with a single spear and a woven basket. Sit with that for a moment. Wealth without possessions. Is that even wealth at all? Modern life runs on the opposite formula. Always widen the gap. Always want more than you have. A bigger house creates a need for more furniture. A faster phone creates a need for faster everything else. Ancient humans, by contrast, often had what researchers call a want-not economy. They wanted little, so little was always enough. This does not mean life back then was easy. It was not. Disease, injury, and infant mortality were brutal realities that modern medicine has erased for most of you reading this. Nobody is arguing you should trade your dentist for a life expectancy of 35. That part of ancient life was genuinely harsh, and it deserves to be remembered honestly. But the myth of the exhausted caveman hunting from dawn until collapse does not hold up. Somewhere between brutal and busy, something got mixed up. So what did they actually fill their hours with, if not endless labor? A more recent anthropologist, James Sussman, spent years living alongside the Jew/Hwanzi decades after Lee's original research. He documented something that modern productivity culture would find almost offensive. Idle time was not treated as a problem to solve. It was treated as the entire point of having survived the morning's work at all. People sat, people talked, people taught children by simply letting them tag along, not through structured lessons but through slow, repeated exposure to real tasks. There was no separate category called leisure that needed to be earned through hours of labor first. Rest was not a reward. Rest was just Tuesday. Compare that to your week. How much of your rest actually feels like rest, and how much of it feels like recovery from something that drained you first? Here is where the science gets even stranger. Researchers studying sleep patterns in remote hunter-gatherer and horticulturalist groups, including work led by sleep scientist Jerome Siegel, found that these communities did not sleep in one long, uninterrupted block the way modern health advice insists you should. They often slept in 2 phases, with a period of quiet wakefulness in between. No blue light, no screens, just darkness, low conversation, maybe some fire gazing, and then a second wave of sleep before dawn. Their total nightly sleep was similar to yours, but their relationship with the night itself was completely different. They were not fighting the dark. They were living inside it. Your ancestors did not experience boredom the way you do either. Without constant stimulation, the human mind does something specific when left alone. It wanders, it replays memories, it plans, it imagines. Modern neuroscience has a name for the brain network that activates during unstructured downtime. Researchers call it the default mode network, and it turns out to be essential for creativity, memory consolidation, and even moral reasoning. Ancient humans, sitting quietly for hours with nothing to check and nothing to scroll, were not wasting time. They were running the exact mental process your brain still relies on today, whenever you finally let it. Except you rarely let it, do you? Every idle moment in modern life gets filled instantly. A red light, a waiting room, the 3 seconds before a web page loads. Your hand already knows the motion. Phone up, thumb moving, feed refreshing. That default mode network your ancient ancestors used constantly barely gets a chance to switch on anymore. You have more free minutes in a technical sense than a Jew Huanzi forager might have had in raw hours. But you have almost none of it in practice because every gap gets paved over with a screen. So who actually worked harder? The numbers say it plainly, even if it feels backwards. 15 hours of active subsistence work a week against your 40, 50, 60 hours of labor, plus a commute, plus errands, plus the emails you answer after dinner because you told yourself you would just check quickly. This is not a call to abandon modern life and walk into the desert with a spear. That would be its own kind of foolishness. The medicine, the food security, the ability to survive a broken bone, these are not things to throw away. But somewhere in the last few thousand years, something quietly flipped. Work expanded to fill every hour it was allowed to touch, and rest became something you have to justify, schedule, or earn. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you sat still for an hour with absolutely nothing to do and did not reach for your phone once? For nearly the entire span of human existence, that was not a rare, precious moment. That was simply what most afternoons looked like. Anthropologists who study time use across dozens of small-scale societies keep finding the same pattern, over and over, across different continents and different climates. Work a modest number of hours. Stop, talk, rest, repeat. You carry the same brain those foragers carried, the same nervous system built for cycles of effort and stillness, not for constant, unbroken output. Somewhere along the way, the stillness got engineered out of the day, replaced with something that always demands one more task, one more notification, one more thing to optimize. You woke up tired this morning. You checked your phone before your feet touched the floor. But the real answer is far stranger than you assumed. The busiest people in human history are not your ancestors. They are you.